Chapter 1163 Normality is returning to the One Piece sphere. The manga is back on its regular schedule and the anime is back like it never left. That's a lie, those 2 weeks without it were painful, but it came back with some diamonds in terms of animation. The cover for volume 113 has been released with the official color scheme of the Holy Knights on elbaph. We've really been going crazy with the colors lately, what with Garling in the anime, the Giants, last volume, the Knights here. I mean, I will get used to it and it's not going to be an issue in the long term, just like with the Elders, their coloring looks perfectly fine to me now. But here, Shamrock's color scheme is the only one someone could have predicted correctly. Killingham with the orange outfit in his zone form, Sommers with the full purple attire, and Gunko who went through several different colors of hair before landing on the blue. So with that as her finalized hair color, we have Shanks born on this island a year ago to his father Garling, a member of the Holy Knights, but we also have another apprentice of the Roger Pirates who happens to be the same age as Shanks, that being Buggy, who also has blue hair. I'm not saying Gunko is Buggy's mother because Gunko's been around for far too long for that to be the case, but the other member of the Manmire family also has a bluish hair color. So could Buggy be a Manmire member? This all could just be a massive coincidence because again, Oda did go through the entire rainbow before getting to this blue, but it's just more interesting to theorize that Buggy may be a celestial dragon as well. And that's just the beginning of what needs to be discussed, because you never would have guessed, but this chapter takes it up another notch from the last one, a common trend since this flashback began. The cover art requests are back as well, the intermission between the cover stories, and this one is of Luffy parkouring with some monkeys. So, you know, one good thing that there is no cover story for a while is that there's not gonna be any more dilly-dallying. It's now straight to the chapter, which is especially good news given what the heck is going on now. The chapter begins with Emu having emerged from Saturn's body, now on top of Saturn's body, kind of merged with it, still silhouetted of course. If the silhouette isn't Emu's true form, then somebody is gonna have to go back and redraw all of these scenes with Emu's real appearance. And the way I'm understanding this is that Emu is simultaneously taking over his body just like with Gunko, but they're also kind of simultaneously using the summoning skill, which is what's bringing them through. Meaning, from my point of view, this is straight up Emu arriving on God Valley here, and they are attacking both pirates and marines alike indiscriminately, and that's a key point which I think is very important when discussing Garp's place moving forward, so I'll speak on that when we get to that part in the chapter. We see Roger separating from his crew. It looks as though the pain and the fighting is catching up to them, so he orders Gabon to take them and go on ahead. Meanwhile, to Garp, the marines tell him that this thing is or was Saturn. As you would expect, he does not sugarcoat his words, and it's these marines' first time seeing an elder in person, and that's the case for Garp as well, who says that appearance is fitting for such scum, vermin, maggots. Garp, Monkey D. Garp, a true legend. We love Garp. He knows what he's saying and he does not care, not at all. And then Emu comes face to face with xebec, who begins the dialogue by calling Emu the king of the rats. That's some pretty good agenda material, for those who care of course, but xebec knows he is the target here as Emu calls xebec Davy Jones, so obviously they sense the man through xebec, that historic bad blood. I said this when xebec told Harald about his true name, that for the time being, with the information we have, I'm saying Davy D. Jones was Joyboy's first mate, his more aggressive and impulsive counterpart, so they had the same goals back then 800 years ago, but very different personalities, and of course all these years later their descendants or successors now walk very different paths, even though those different paths may lead them both to the same destination. It's also interesting that they don't say Davy D. Jones, but just Davy Jones. It could be nothing at all, since xebec also simply referred to the guy as Davy Jones without the D when he infiltrated Pangaea Castle, but it also could mean something, such as Emu simply being so petty that they don't want to say the D as to not metaphorically breathe more life into the D clan, their worst enemy. Or, and this is going to be one of those theories that is more headcanon since there's no real evidence for it, but it sounds like it could be right, and this builds on the existing idea that it was Joyboy who bestowed his crewmates or closest followers with the D initial himself. So with that as a base, I will add he did this at the end of the Void Century. He knew the war was lost and bestowed the D as a message, legacy to pass on, so their dream, their mission wouldn't be forgotten. Someone would inherit it. So that would mean people like Davy D. Jones and Nefertari D. Lilly, Imu knew them as not having the initial D, since they only would have been given it at the end of the war, which could also mean that when Imu asked Cobra about Lily's name, we received the surprise that she had the D, but for Imu it was something else. It was confirmation that Lily betrayed them since they now had the D. Like reverse dramatic irony, you know, Imu came to a realization in that scene that we did not know about. But to go a step further, this would also mean that the Davy clan is older than the D clan, and we see the length Imu is willing to go to eliminate the Davy clan. Maybe that's why, because the Davy clan actively fought against them 800 years ago, while the D clan only became a thing afterwards. And one more thing is that it's clear the D clan don't know the meaning behind their name, while with the Davy clan they seem to understand who they are, what their ancestor did, which is why Imu is gunning so hard for them here, because they know bits of the truth. While with the D clan, maybe it's because they don't know the meaning of their name that Imu's just let them be. It's basically pure arrogance, you know, not knowing what the D clan is going to become, the storm that they will bring. Anyway, back to the chapter. Imu may have called xebec Davy Jones without the D because Davy D. Jones didn't have the D during the Ancient War. And speaking of the Davy clan knowing about some very vital information, xebec denies being that guy, saying he's never met him, obviously with a heavy sarcastic tone, but he does agree that what was promised must be fulfilled or kept. My first thought was that this promise was the same thing as what Robin read on the poneglyph back in Fishman Island, which was Joyboy apologizing for a promise that he broke with the mermaid princess Poseidon of 800 years ago and the people, with that promise almost definitely being something to do with whatever leads to the world seeing the dawn. Maybe Joyboy didn't only promise this to the fishmen, but he promised this to everyone on his side. Maybe it was slightly different for each different race, like the giants or the buccaneers or whoever else, but the main idea of it was to free the world, bring the dawn, which is what xebec is saying must be fulfilled here. And at least to me, this also gives credence to the idea of Davy D. Jones being Joyboy's first mate, or maybe an allied pirate as well actually, but in either case I don't think Joyboy would have shared this promise to someone who was his enemy. And this sets Imu off, saying they all need to be erased, which to me, based on what I said I think the promise is, includes the Davy clan and the D clan and everybody in between. Again, like the Buccaneers, we saw how they were treated in Kuma's backstory. Their world is not completed, although xebec says this isn't their world, so that's a bit more of Sengoku twisting the tale. It doesn't look like he ever wanted to become king of the world like we were led to believe. You know, the craziest thing about all of this is that I haven't really questioned, especially recently when Imu has become much more prominent in the manga, I haven't questioned their motive, and I haven't really seen others question it either, outside of memes like Joyboy stealing Lily from them, which could still be possible in all honesty, or the Mother Earth idea, but in both cases the theory doesn't really delve too deep. And for the most part, I feel like I've kind of just accepted that Imu's goal is world domination. It's the most basic villain 101 kind of motivation, but in a story like One Piece, which is built on freedom and all kinds of adjacent concepts that build on that foundation, world domination suddenly becomes a lot deeper, you know, like what comes along with that, order, control and such, but it's almost guaranteed that there's more to Imu than just world domination, you know. And it begins this fight, the beginning of the end. It's a fight which is big enough as it is with just these two, but it's just gonna keep getting bigger as the chapter goes on. And at the same time, Garp arrives at the scene with some marines at his back, and of course they plan to take action, but which side do they take? The side of the world's most notorious and heinous pirate. Remember, again, I say this a lot, xebec's not a good person. Don't be fooled by his love for his family. He's committed a ton of crimes that would still be considered major crimes even if the world government weren't in power. But on the other side is this creature who is, or used to be, Saturn, who is attacking both friend and foe. Is there a right side to pick here, or is it a choice between the lesser of two evils? But as the Roger pirates are making their way, Captain John has set something up and says his farewells to the Rocks pirates, so he's the first to metaphorically fall, the first to betray the crew openly, and we see Dragon making his way to a Navy ship, so he hasn't lost all faith in that organization just yet. Although before he can get there, he finds himself within range of someone's magnetic pull. Captain John does have kids' magnet fruit. We've talked about how they could possibly be related last chapter, or the one before that, based off of the real-life pirates, Captain John and William Kidd, as you would expect from someone whose legacy is collecting the second biggest treasure in the world. And he uses it to attract all the treasure to himself, and it's a really great panel with his arms out with treasure almost literally raining down on him. He's living up to his legacy with this one panel, and even the Roger pirates begin to get pulled in thanks to their weapons, while Roger just straight up forces his way out of it as if the force isn't even there, and he goes off to join the main battlefield. But Captain John's greed here leads him into conflict with Gonsby, who sees what he's doing and attacks him. The Rocks pirates are collapsing, but on top of that, Gonsby has Mr. Five's bomb devil fruit, but I don't think there's any greater connection there. Although what's really cool is I think we saw him using it last chapter, but surprisingly he actually defeats Captain John here. Magnet fruit users really do not have the best of luck, do they? Shiki shows up, so you can surmise that Shaki, carried by Rayleigh, made it out of the danger zone, the main danger zone as in the center of the island, and his first instinct is to chastise Gonsby for attacking John before he hears about the value of the treasure, and Gonsby turns his sights on the Golden Lion next because he has no intention of sharing the treasure either, so he is the second to outwardly betray the crew. And I said last chapter that I thought he was the equivalent of a Toby Ropo member on the Rocks Pirates, but I may have spoken too soon. I don't think he is as strong as Shiki, but he's also not afraid to fight, which should be expected since he did make it to the Rocks Pirates in the first place, but we'll see maybe next week how this does turn out for him. So that's most of the Rocks Pirates accounted for. Gloriosa is MIA, she just fell straight off the radar. Maybe after Shaki was saved, she decided to leave the island as well. Stroisen's probably hiding somewhere near Big Mom while that fight is going on, and Gilbaster is probably dead already. And back to Garp, he's made up his mind over who he's gonna fight, and really for him it wasn't too tough of a decision. Saturn, because they are attacking everybody no matter which side they are on, so taking them down would be first priority. Meanwhile, Kaido once again wants to fight before Big Mom comes flying in on Zeus, pissed fresh off of being struck by Kaido and losing the fruit, and attacks Kaido first while Roger shows up at the same time. The Titans are converging, and what happens next? Well, first let's just lay out the situation quickly. Big Mom, Kaido, Newgate, xebec, Roger and Garp versus Emu. What the actual fuck? All these big names, big personalities, big egos, big hitters are fighting on the same side. Am I awake? Is this a dream? Is this a fan fiction? I need to double check the date. It's not April Fools either. What is this image I'm looking at? They all attack together. If there's anything that deserves to be called peak fiction, it's this page right here. Garp uses Galaxy Impact, Roger uses Divine Departure, Big Mom's Ikoku Sovereignty, Whitebeard, Newgate's first named attack, Hakua or Space Breaker, Space Destroyer. Maybe named attacks were too much for his old body to handle in Marineford, but he's got plenty to give here. xebec's first named attack, which means a lot. Pandemonium, which today is a word used to describe a chaotic scene, you know, it's pandemonium, but the origin of the word is from a poem written in the 17th century where it was the name for the capital of hell. Look who he is fighting. Remember what Sabo said in Marijua, hell at the top of the world. By the way, the more we learn, the more we question how the heck did Sabo survive that day. Sabo running away there and managing to get out is genuinely a feat for him, but that name Pandemonium, so good. But also the kanji read as Cursed Abyss or Curse of the Abyss, clear reference to Davy Jones' locker, a metaphor for the ocean, a bottomless abyss for drowned sailors. It's just chef's kiss. What an attack name. But last but not least is Kaido's attack, which is the best of the bunch. His attack is Dragon. Yes, that is ingenuity right there. But really we know that this move goes on to become his Borrow Breath, Blast Breath attack in the future, but in this moment he was so high off of the excitement of finally getting a fruit that he was too hyper to even think of a proper name, like a kid who just got a new toy. He told Big Mom to watch him as well, and he's just shouted dragon. He has been the funniest part of this entire flashback, and even more, Big Mom's attack was meant for him even though it hit Emu, but that's because Kaido was able to dodge it. He has made her look so bad here, attacked her, stole the fruit, she attacked him, and now he's dodged her attack while simultaneously launching an attack of his own elsewhere. Big Mom saying Kaido owed her after this day is sounding more and more like that was her way of saving face here. She gaslit herself into thinking Kaido had her to thank for the fruit, but who would have thought? The Rocks pirates fell apart, but the core of the crew, the captain and these three, it was ride or die. It's the honor of pirates. Even in the pirate world there is a code. It's so crazy to think that these guys fought Emu, although none of them apart from xebec even know that it is Emu, because he just had to give a philosophical answer to Newgate's question by saying it's the world. They don't know that they're fighting the hidden ruler. Also, a side note, another thing that shows that the Davy clan knew much more is that xebec knew about Emu's existence in Marijwa even before he became a pirate, and with what he wanted to achieve, he said he'd show his crew the peak of the world, and to be fair to him, he has succeeded. As we speak, he is doing just that. And as for Roger and Garp, I think the same applies to them as the others. They don't know who they're fighting, they don't know who Emu is, so you wonder how what Roger ends up learning on Laugh Tale recontextualizes this entire event for him. He learns about Emu, he learns about Joyboy, he learns about the Davy clan, he learns about the D clan, and he laughed. Why did he laugh? But as for Garp though, Monkey D. Garp, he doesn't know who Emu is here, he doesn't know about their existence. It's difficult to say whether he does in the present. Like Dragon, I'm sure he definitely knows, but Garp has always seemed to be more in the know than everyone else given his stature. But is Emu a step too far? Maybe he still has no idea that the creature he fought this day was the hidden king of the world. However, what he definitely does know is that what is in front of him, or what used to be in front of him from his perspective, is or was Saturn. Emu must be thinking though, looking over all of these people attacking, why the heck is there a marine amongst them? What's going on? He's supposed to be on our side. So next question, how was Garp allowed to stay in the Marines after this? Did this incident boost his approval ratings that high that Emu decided against getting rid of him as the guy who everyone else in the organization looked up to? Because it doesn't look like Garp found out about Emu's existence, so there's no threat there. Maybe his influence in the Marines and what he represents was worth keeping around, because even if he did fight against them here, he didn't learn anything he wasn't supposed to, and to the best of our knowledge, xebec does die here, which is Emu's goal, so it's not that big of an issue for them. Maybe it simply comes down to that Emu just does not care enough about whether Garp stays or not. It's so far beneath their notice. Although with this taking over of Saturn's body and Gunko's in the present, do Gunko and Saturn know about this? Can they still see what's going on, feel what's going on? Because if yes, then Saturn both sees and feels Garp attacking him, which is really funny to think about, that whenever Saturn looks at Garp or thinks about Garp, he remembers that day but knows he can't do anything because Garp is literally too popular to get rid of. Or there is one more thing I've forgotten to mention. From the Marines' perspective, every Marine's perspective, including Garp, all they know is that is what used to be Saturn. They have no idea what's going on, and with Emu taking over, none of them know that it is Emu. So this could just very easily be twisted that a foreign entity had taken over Saturn's body, and with Emu or this foreign entity attacking Marines as well, Garp was just doing his job. Like I said, he has no idea about Emu's existence, so once Emu does relinquish control of Saturn and goes back to Marijwa, they could twist the tale of it being Garp beating the foreign entity out of Saturn instead, and Garp would be none the wiser because he literally does not know any better. He doesn't have the full details of this situation, and with him actively saving Marines as he does this with more Marines watching on, then it also makes sense why they gave him the title of the hero after this incident. But as for Emu not caring, part of the reason I say that is because when all of these powerhouses attack together, Emu just heals back up. We believe it's them who's given these abilities to the elders and holy knights. It makes sense that their own version would be a step above, and they respond by unleashing a massive burst of Conqueror's Haki. The fodder gets dropped, and based on how the crew members who are escorting Rayleigh and Shaki are all looking back, it does seem as though those guys are in the clear, kind of, because they are still on the island. And of course the treasure get the treasure, and Dragon, who remains steadfast in his conviction to save the baby Shanks even even now, has lost the baby Shanks, who we see is attracted to the sparkle of the jewels and still has enough energy to climb into a chest himself. So it doesn't look like it was Dragon who was the one to make the decision to put Shanks on the Oro Jackson, since the Roger Pirates were his best option in the situation. Instead, it looks like the Roger Pirates swept up this chest that Shanks crawled into themselves, since this is in the vicinity of their fight. So while this may be the point where Dragon and Shanks separate, you know based on who Dragon is here and who he goes on to become that until he found out this baby was the very same guy who became captain of the red-haired pirates, he probably carried the guilt of losing the twins for a very long time, and in Shamrock's case carries that guilt to this day, because I assume he knows Shamrock is alive as a holy knight, but he couldn't save him from that world, that environment. Roger and Garp are arguing, Kaido and Big Mom are arguing. Kaido cannot vomit up the fruit, but Big Mom still wants compensation, so you could say that was the start of this debt. So let's revisit Kaido's top 5 once again. To be fair, it's very easy to come up with reasons why certain characters are excluded, like Garp for example. He never actually fought Garp head on, so there's no reason for him to include him. As for Emu here, he has no idea who he's fighting, so maybe that's why they're not included, because he has no clue what they are. But also, they're all pirates on his list, so maybe it's just a list exclusively for pirates. And I am also pretty sure the list is built with a sense of respect on top of strength as well. He respected each of those men. He wouldn't respect Garp as a marine, and he wouldn't respect Emu because he doesn't know what Emu is. He can't respect what he doesn't know. Respect to Kaido himself though, hands rated E for everyone. So as for how overwhelming Emu seems here, is it that surprising when we look back to the mural and see Emu on their own in the ancient Void Century war, assumedly, against everything else? Joyboy, his allied nations, ancient weapons, it's always been Emu versus the rest. No wonder they weren't bothered by Xebec's appearance in the Chamber of Flowers. They weren't threatened at all. But also in that scene, Xebec said he would be back, so he did have some kind of plan which the God Valley incident and his family being captured were not a part of. Before this incident, he must have thought he still had a few more years, many years maybe, to put the pieces together, with a few of those pieces being those 2 devil fruits he wanted to get his hands on. How big a difference would they have made? Because we know that in the present, where Emu is also present, Loki has one of those fruits, and Xebec said only Harald could bring out its full potential. I think that same sentiment applies to Loki as well. But the other fruit is a complete unknown. Maybe it's the Nika fruit, which would make perfect sense. There is no need for a further explanation if that's the case, but what if it is something else? But to the end of the chapter, Emu starts digging into Xebec's mind, testing his focus. They bring up the man's family, which is of course going to set Xebec off. He's gone through all of this on this island for them. Xebec continues his onslaught and cuts Emu into literal pieces. That's one more thing that will need to be redrawn once Emu's real appearance is revealed to us, if it isn't the silhouette. But Emu isn't going to do anything as they stab him with these like tentacles, but instead it's Xebec who is going to seal his clan's fate and destroy his own family, because they, as expected, Domi Reversi Davy D Xebec ordering him to kill his family. And everyone else watches on, no clue as to what they're looking at. The transformation begins, the fangs begin to grow as we see Eris and Teach running across the island still. First, the fact that Emu was able to flip and turn Xebec, it doesn't look like they could do it on a fresh or relatively fresh version of him, so they needed to get into his mind, break his mental fortitude, and physically hurt him as well to actually be able to turn him. So, you know, turning a fresh Xebec would have been massive, but I guess even Emu had to break him down first. But also, maybe because they impaled Xebec while executing the technique, it meant it had a more potent effect. And also, with how we see them testing Xebec's mental fortitude, we know in the present when they turned Dory and Brogy, they were pissed as well. So maybe that's one of the requirements, the emotional state of the person. So this should lead to the fight against Roger and Garp, where Garp stopping a rampaging Xebec will also mean he unintentionally saves the celestial dragons as well. And if Xebec does end up going after his family, does that mean Garp and Roger have to save Eris and Teach? There was that panel at the end of the God Valley section of Kuma's backstory where Roger seemed to be chasing Xebec, and we know dummy reversied characters retain some sense of their self after being turned, so could it be that Roger and Garp save Xebec's family from Xebec himself? This was the 4th chapter of the incident, and I think we have another 2 to go at least. My initial predictions and that 4 would be the maximum, but I am happy I was wrong. But where does this situation leave Big Mom Kaido and Newgate? Their captain has been compromised, I guess. I don't really know how they would view it. Do they watch from the side, not knowing what to do? Do they fight by his side regardless because he's still their captain? Do they retreat now that xebec is lost? Ride or die, but xebec has kind of died here, so maybe it is time to go. How is Emu dealt with after xebec? Is there a future where he fights his way out of the Domi Reversi? Does Harald have any role to play here, or is he gonna find out about his friend's demise through the news? The manipulated news, by the way. Does he ever learn the full truth? Is there a future where xebec survives? Questions, a lot of questions. I'm still gonna say both Eris and Teach survive. I think Teach's last image of his father is him being cut down. But here's one final question. Is it safe to say that this is the most important flashback in the story in terms of the wider narrative to date?